You're listening to a 3CR podcast recorded in the 3CR Community Radio studio in Melbourne, Australia. If you like what you hear, please consider donating or subscribing so we can keep bringing you more independent community content. For more information, go to 3cr.org.au.
Slavery is back.
Welcome to a place where private business profit from a captive labour force, yet pennies are spent on medical services to a population in which the Indigenous, the poor and the mentally ill are overrepresented. Where isolation, humiliation and degradation are facts of life. Welcome to prison.
It depends who's telling the story, I suppose. The prisoners would have one view, the people who work in the prison system would have another, and I think it's up to people to decide where the truth is.
Give government propaganda and the media spin doctors the flick. And check out Doin Time for news, views and tunes on prison issues from Guantanamo Bay to Christmas Island to prisons and detention centres everywhere. Every Monday at 4 p.m. on your community radio 3CR.
We are still fired up and we're still talking about revolution.
Hello and welcome to the Doin Time show. This is 3CR Community Radio, 855 AM on the dial, streaming live on www.3cr.org.au. And we're broadcasting on the lands of the Wurundjeri people from the Kulin Nation. And a warning that this episode of Doin Time contains audio images of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who have died and discussion of deaths in custody. First up on the show, we will interview Keiran, President of the Black People's Union, and he's a long-time First Nations activist, and he will talk to us about what land he's from. And we'll also speak to Uncle Coco as well, and they'll both talk about what land they're from and speak about Canberra and protesting against the King's visit and lots of other things. I'd like to talk to them about colonisation and what's happened about the King and other issues. And then after that, we will be joined by Brett Collins from Justice Action to talk about two submissions: Youth Justice Senate Inquiry, Justice Action submission, and the Youth Justice Senate Inquiry from the Community Coalition. The Community Justice Coalition. So first up, we will speak to Keiran and Uncle.
Hey, how you going, Marisa?
Welcome. How are you going?
Yeah, not too bad. Me and Uncle just sitting side by side here on the speakerphone.
Oh, that's fantastic. Okay, so hi, Uncle.
G'day, how are you?
Really great to have you on the show.
Good to hear from you and all your people down there.
Oh, for sure. No, it is good to have you both. So, Uncle, can you just start off by telling us what land you're from?
I'm a Cooma man. I'm a Māori. Come from the Kalamar. That's the closest hometown. That's where I grew up. But I have been operating out of Minton, out of Brisbane, for the last off and on since I was about 13 years old. And I'm part of the Brisbane Blacks community and the Brisbane Black Treaty, and part of sovereign movement and the National Embassy collective. And I've been fortunate enough to be involved in a lot of the sovereignty movement now, and more directly involved with the resistance.
I'm really happy to hear that, Uncle Coco. It'd be really good to hear from you about that today. And what about you, Keiran? What land are you from?
Yeah, I'm a Waniwandi man from the Yuin Nation, which is on the south coast of what's now known as New South Wales.
So, Uncle, can you start off telling us what's happening in Canberra and what's been going on?
Well, what's going on at the moment, we're just ready to pack up and go back to Sydney for meetings tonight, and the last day of confrontation with the King of so-called the British Empire and the King of Australia. And we're just hoping that all these people that are turning up to see their king pack their bags and go home with them and take their families with them, because they're not wanted here anymore. So, yeah, we're just getting ready to go back to Sydney, have a meeting and discuss the further actions that we've got to do tomorrow.
That's really good, Uncle. And I think you were mentioning that you're from the sovereignty movement. You were here in Melbourne, weren't you, for Camp Sovereignty?
I've been very fortunate that people invite me to come around and talk at their gatherings and communities and talk about freedom and what it means to be free and liberation and restitution. And the big part of that comes from sovereignty. But the amount of allies that we have now and the understanding and the debate is an achievement on a lot of the young people like Keiran and my daughters and other families and other daughters and sons of past activists. I just had the pleasure of having lunch with Kevin and Gilbert's granddaughters, and he's a legend. So it's a new direction. It's and we're starting to share and support one another through the lay down of the resistance. And it was a pleasure to be in Naarm a couple of weeks ago for the arms disarmament, and to see people like Lizzie and other people and stand with the Palestinian families in Melbourne. And we the allyship is something we need, and we need to share and work together to get rid of the imperialism that infestation the world. And I think the world's responding properly to that infestation of the pox that is imperialism and capitalism.
I love the way you infestation, that's a good word. But look, the reason why I invited you and Keiran to come onto the show is because I could just listen all day to what's going on. It's really important to have elders and to have the stories of First Nations people and lived experience on the show. And our show is really about not just people in prison, but also looking at marginalised communities and also looking at the Free Palestine rallies as well. Keiran, can you tell us a little bit about what's happening and about the monarch and how the monarch is destructive to First Nations people, and give us a little bit of background about what's happening there?
So earlier today, Charles was down at the War Memorial doing a tour or whatever. So we were down there earlier today at the front protesting, trying to disrupt it as best as we could. Didn't have the biggest numbers, but there was a lot of energy down there, and the people that did show up were really staunch, really solid. Managed to make a fair bit of noise. There was a hell of a lot of police repression down there, though. Probably easy 4 times as many coppers as there was us. And, they had a bunch of, snipers as well, military gear set up on the roofs as well down at the War Memorial. But at the end of the day, we're protesting the King because it is the royal family that gives Australia its so-called legitimacy and its so-called sovereignty, the Australian government, over our land here. So, at the end of the day, King Charles is the sovereign figurehead of our occupation. That's why we need to protest him. That's why it's so important. And at the end of the day as well, King Charles has the power and has the ability to be able to do stuff like enter into treaties with us. So, yes, there is a lot of different ways that we could push for stuff like treaties, but we could actually have a proper international treaty, if that's what we wanted to do, by entering into agreements with people like Charles. So, we're down there trying to get his attention and trying to, I suppose, organise some sort of acknowledgement of the fact that this is still occupied land and that there's unfinished business here that has to be reconciled with.
And what do you think, Uncle, about all this?
Well, it's interesting, and I say good day to many of the lads that are probably incarcerated, or some of the women that are incarcerated, listening to your program, because the simple fact is that the whole legal system is based on the Crown. When you get sentenced to go to jail, it's at the King's pleasure. It's at the Queen's the these people live halfway around the world, and they had the power to sack a Prime Minister. It's for those people that remember Gough Whitlam and the CIA and ASIO and the capitalists were the people that cut short his Prime Ministership. It was the Queen of England through John Kerr that sacked Gough Whitlam with the support of the CIA. People say he's a figurehead, pretty strong figurehead when you can sack a Prime Minister.
Mm-hmm. And I suppose too, like that's the thing that quite a lot of listeners might not be aware of and might not recognise. You know, people talk about the king as just this symbolic figurehead that doesn't have any power, but at the end of the day, he actually does still retain quite a lot of power over the colonial occupation. And not only that, even if he didn't have any power, pardon me, I've been yelling all day. Even if he didn't actually have power, which he does, even if he didn't, people like Charles are still in receipt of so much of our stolen wealth, and they're still taking so much of our wealth from us. You know, this is one of the richest families in the entire world history, and the only reason they are so rich is because they continue to occupy lands around the world and continue to steal the resources and steal the wealth from their colonies.
Yeah, the two documents that were being served on the head of the British Empire today, one was, I was put in jail today. I was arrested at the protest in Canberra at the War Memorial by the state and federal police, and I was prevented from serving the King a summons on behalf of Uncle Robbie Thorpe on his involvement in genocide and war crimes against Aboriginal people.
And when was that?
That was this morning. I was released from jail at 12:30.
You went to jail this morning?
Been in jail, been out, and I was able to come out and witness
Oh, my God.
the most courageous person I know in Australia at the moment, Lydia Thorpe.
What happened?
And Lydia challenging the King in the Parliament, in the chamber, and being kicked out. And the courage that she showed by calling the King out for being the thief and the murderer and the criminal that he is and the abuser of women that he is.
I love it.
The courage you people, the people that elected her to her position in Melbourne, should be congratulated, because she is the most courageous person I know at the moment in Canberra.
Is Robbie Thorpe there too, Uncle Robbie?
No, Uncle Robbie's he's challenging the King and the royal family.
Oh, yes.
Charles III, as
okay. Yeah.
And he's challenging him in the district courts in Melbourne at the moment. People should really get behind him and really support him.
You need to rock up to that, listeners.
Yeah.
I mean,
just
go
for
on.
listeners, you can head to crimesceneaustralia.com.au to keep up to date with everything Uncle Robbie's doing.
Can you repeat that website again?
It's crimesceneaustralia.com.au.
crimesceneaustralia.com.au. He's doing a series of court cases there, and which is really important. I mean, it's 1788 all over again. Look at the disgusting history that's happened. Even in England, all the Aboriginal remains were, excuse me for saying so, were taken to England and put in museums.
And we're still fighting for most of these remains to come back.
Yeah.
So it's an endless, but like other countries around the world, we've got to push for decolonisation. We've got to fight for our freedom and liberation, and we've got to. They have to pay the restitution that makes us and creates us to be part of in poverty, and that freedom and that decolonisation, people have to actually decide whether they want to maintain that greed and that privilege and the deceit and the involvement in the war crimes, or they want to come clean and start again.
Exactly. And look, it's so great to have the two of you on the show. What about you, Keiran? What do you think about sovereignty and, what's going on today?
Look, our sovereignty is still intact. It's something that we've never given up. We've got the rights of our sovereignty still. What we're really missing out on and lacking at the moment, though, is the ability to be able to actually exercise and enforce our sovereignty. Our ability to practice our sovereignty. Now, there is, ways that we do still try and practice our sovereignty, and that we do still try and exert our existence through our sovereignty. But we're up against, such heavy police repression from this colonial occupation. I mean, just to give you an example, yesterday morning, one of our members up here in Canberra had her door kicked in by the counter-terrorism squad because of, this action that was organised today. And, this is a single mother who's at home alone with her kid, and first thing in the morning gets her door kicked in by the counter-terrorism squad.
Oh.
And the amount of people that let this... There was a young girl involved in it today, and the bashing that she got off the police, I hope people see the footage and it goes viral, because this is far, far, far more than was warranted. And the force, the amount of force that were applied to this young girl actually made me sick. And all those witnesses that supported the king supported that action. And it really questions, their values and how they respect women, young women.
When you really think about it, isn't the king complicit in genocide, and hasn't that been happening since 1788?
Yeah. Well, before 1788, if we look at the rest of the world as well, but and that's another thing. Like the colonisation and the genocide hasn't ended here on this continent. And when we say genocide, we're not just saying it in a dramatic way. Like, we're talking about actual breaches of the United Nations Genocide Convention are still ongoing here in this occupation. And the king signs off on all that. You go look at all those legislation, like all the legislation to steal away our kids, to mass incarcerate us, to destroy our culture and whatever else, all acts of genocide. It's all got the king's stamp on it. It's got the royal seal on it.
Exactly. And what about all this police repression and, the woman that had her door kicked in? Are these things and incidents being documented, and is there going to be like a defence committee organised for that?
They've got to account for it, and we'll be taking measures, and we'll get advice, and we'll put them in the right order, and there are things that have got to be followed up. So that's where we need support from the public out there to help us with our legal changes, the legal challenges, and the redress that needs to take place.
Can you tell listeners how they can donate for these really important causes?
Well, I think don't pay the rent. We're sick of funds going to the wrong people. Don't fund corporate blackfellas. Don't fund organisations that are funded by the repressor, by the government. Support people like Keiran down in Melbourne, the BPU, because the resistance movement are the only NGOs, they're the only non-government organisations where the funds go into direct action.
Yeah, that's right. And because there's been such a really horrible history of not just stolen generation, but stolen wages and a lot of things going on, I wanted to ask each of you, what would be your vision?
Misdirection and the stealing of allies.
Exactly.
Funds.
Exactly.
And they're funding the Uncle Toms and the Jackies that are driving the nails into our coffin. And we call these people out, and they accuse us of lateral violence for telling the truth. But be wise. Be wise if you're a listener choose which blackfella's taking you for a ride and which one's not.
It's important for us all to know the truth, isn't it?
Absolutely.
How do we donate? How do people... Is there a website or what do you do?
Yeah, there's a few places people can donate. They can head to the blackpeoplesunion.org website. There's a link on there to set up either a one-off or a regular donation. People can choose how much they want to donate, whether it's $1 a month or whether they want to drop us $100 as a one-off or whatever. There's a whole bunch of options. Also head to the Treaty Before Sport page on Instagram. There's some BSB and account details on there for people to donate directly to these actions that are currently happening now, as well as ongoing action happening right across the eastern half of this continent.
The support that we get from allies is you can't question it. That's what enables us people that are involved and on the front line and doing stuff on the front line to be able to do it.
And look, at the end of the day too, everything that we do is, for the most part, it comes out of our own pocket. We don't receive any government funding. We don't receive corporate funding. The donations that we do get are very far in between quite often. Everything that BPU's done over the last 2 years has been off just donations from, the goodwill of people in the community, or it's come out of members' own pockets. And, so many of our people, especially our people who are involved in the front lines and who are there putting in the work every day and organising, they're not working well-paid jobs and stuff. They don't have thousands of dollars of savings in the bank account. Quite often we're doing what we do out of our settling pays.
Exactly, and that's why I invited you and Uncle onto the show, because I just feel like, Uncle Coco, you made an interesting comment before about you don't just interview CEOs, you interview people that are on the ground as well.
Absolutely, and look, the world's changing. We live in an exciting time. We live in a time of a lot of pain, a lot of suffering, especially when we observe what's happening in the Palestine, with Lebanon, with the Middle East. How many times are those poor buggers, how many kids have been killed? How many females, how many innocent people have been slaughtered in the last 12 months? We could go back to 1948, but I'm just talking in the last 12 months. Now, people around the world for the first time in Washington, in New York, in Britain, are actually telling their governments and calling their governments out for the illegal actions that they're doing. We can't let those deaths be in vain. We can't let all that pain, all that suffering, all the heartache be in vain. People have the power to mobilise around the world to change the governments at a local government level, at a state government level, at a Commonwealth level. And, harness it, work together, fund it ourselves, make it work at every one of those levels, because that's how change comes about.
It's true. Keiran, do you have any concluding comments before we finish?
Reaffirming what Uncle Coco's saying, and at the end of the day, as I'm always saying, as Uncle Robbie's always saying, as so many people are always saying, our liberation isn't just something that's for us. We're looking to liberate not only us, but we're looking to liberate everybody who wants to actually live on this continent and live a better life, doesn't want to see ecocide, doesn't want to see housing crisis, doesn't want to see unemployment crisis, etc., etc. What we're doing, what we're fighting for is a better world for everybody, whether they're Indigenous or not. So, it's in everybody's interest to actually get behind what we're doing, to back what we're doing, because we have a legitimate cause. We are the legitimate owners of this continent, and we just want to look after everyone properly.
Exactly. Well, keep it up. I mean, there's no more actions now, right? It's all finished?
We're wrapped up today in Canberra, but up in Sydney tomorrow there's going to be some more actions. King Charles is meant to be going to the Opera House, I believe, tomorrow.
Okay.
So there's going to be a bunch of actions up there. If any listeners aren't in Melbourne and happen to be in New South Wales, listening online or whatever, definitely head to Sydney if you can tomorrow. Or if anybody's got the means to travel up tonight, by all means, please do.
11 o'clock at the Opera House or 8 o'clock in the morning at the Embassy at Victoria Park.
See, I don't hear any of this on ABC or any other media outlets.
And you don't hear about what's happening in New Caledonia and Kanaki. You know, the amount of young people that have been killed, the war that the French have been imposing on the Kanak people, who are fortunate to have a visit from the head chief over there. And we don't hear, we've had journalists. And this is how the imperialist media works. They don't report on Western Sahara. They don't report in Palestine or Lebanon. They don't report on Kanaki. They don't report on West Papua. They choose to maintain and support the privilege and the further dispossession of First Nations people.
Yeah, but that's not going to happen. We're going to have a vision for the future.
Work together, stand strong together, and knock the walls, break down their systems, break down their governments, and the two-party preferred.
Exactly. Thanks so much, Keiran and Uncle. Thanks a lot.
All right, thanks for having us.
Come back soon.
Love is all. Be good. Turn up, turn up, turn up.
Absolutely. Come back soon to the show. Thanks a lot.
Will do.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. And that was Uncle Coco and Keiran. Keiran's from the Black People's Union, and Uncle Coco is doing a lot of treaty work in Brisbane, and he's Māori as well. And, yeah, I'm going to bring, before I get on to Brett Collins from Justice Action, just to say that they're all doing great work over there. And I'm going to actually play a song now by Southeast Desert Metal, and they're an Aboriginal band, and the song is called Eagle.
Marxist historian.
I'm an eagle.
in case people have just tuned in, this is the Doin Time show, and you just heard a song by Southeast Desert Metal, and it was called Eagle, and they're a great Aboriginal band. And we're going to be speaking now with Brett Collins. Justice-Assheton is where he's from, and he is a regular guest on our show, and I really love his work and the work of Justice-Assheton, which is a not-for-profit, self-funded organisation based in Australia that champions the interests and rights of marginalised members of the society. And they've been involved in service provision, peer mentoring and accommodation, as well as supervising community service orders for 23 years. No jurisdiction in Australia currently provides telecommunications in cells for incarcerated youth. And I've just read out a few bits and pieces from the two submissions that we're going to be discussing. And the submissions are really about youth justice. So there's one submission will be the Youth Justice Senate inquiry from Justice-Assheton, which we'll talk about, and then we'll talk about the Youth Justice Senate inquiry from the Community Justice Coalition, and both submissions are excellent. Hello, Brett. Welcome to the show.
Hello, Marisa. Lovely to speak with you again.
You too, you too.
Hey.
Now, Brett, can we talk about these submissions? Can you discuss some of the themes and recommendations that have come out of these submissions?
Look, absolutely. I mean, look, probably the starkest thing of all is that, first of all, that it's taken so long to have an inquiry at the Commonwealth level looking at what's happening in youth justice. I think most people who are interested in kids, young people elsewhere, and are all concerned about what's happening, for example, in the Northern Territory, where after a law and order election, the government there has decided they're going to reduce the age of criminal responsibility to 10. So it means that they'll be locking people up at the age of 10 in Northern Territory, rather than doing what they're doing in other states and territories and internationally, which is ensuring that kids are not locked up, that kids are treated with some dignity in their community, and whatever has caused any disturbance actually then is dealt with at the level of the community, and making sure that community gets support. So there's a lot of really troublesome things happening around youth justice, and the fact that the Commonwealth has entered it and the Senate inquiry is on is a great thing.
Fantastic. And I noticed that specifically in looking at both submissions, one of the things that I've discovered is that it's important for Justice-Assheton is looking at the engagement with youth prisoners on policy areas that concern them, because there really is a lack of lived experience recognition, isn't there?
Well, look, it really is. In fact, look, we went through carefully these 160 submissions that have been put in, and what's is stark is that there isn't really anything at all. I haven't seen a single thing in any of the submissions which come directly out of the people who are affected. And that's just appalling. That means really that there hasn't been an effort to reach into particularly the institutions. So we've got almost 1,000 kids around Australia locked in the institutions. These kids are the ones who are living out the experience of youth justice, and they're the ones who should be engaged. It means that really there should have been at least up in the notice boards. There should have been notice of the inquiry. There should have been the young people themselves should have had the chance to talk through their representatives. So they actually have people who are they're dealing with each other all the time. They should be encouraged to have discussions inside about the issues that are being raised out in the Senate. So they're the sort of things which would happen in any other area, but because the young people, they're regarded as being less than significant. And yet the whole thing's about them. And so that's one thing. It needs to be an engagement. And the other shocking thing, there's shocking things all over the place actually, but the one of the most shocking things is the level of Indigenous representation inside the institutions. Like in New South Wales, now over 60% of the kids in there are actually Indigenous kids. The same thing right across Australia. And in Northern Territory, 100%. We're actually, I don't know whether it's still the case, we're actually the ones who are locked inside the institution. So, we're talking about, inherent racism without a question. And then the third thing, which is just, mind-blowing, is the amount of money they spend. I can't believe it. In Victoria, $1.6 million per person in youth detention. $1.6 million. How do they spend that? Gee, what an outrage. And if the money were to be put in, even a portion of that, put it into the communities themselves, that's the problem would be, if not solved, it would certainly be a whole lot better. You'd have some people who actually then wouldn't have to scramble around to, or even do drugs for that matter. Even the drug use is another issue as well. That's inherent in all the arguments is all the social problems that are connected with the kids, young children, young people that. Where people who haven't got things to do, who get lost in drugs, all around them. Why wouldn't there be a problem?
Exactly. And so, it's in looking at both submissions, it's very specific, and it's amazing that all these recommendations. Is it going to happen though? I mean, for example, the computers in cells, the counselling, the external counselling, the rejection of youth justice imprisonment as a solution for social problems and a shift to restorative justice programs. That was recommendation number 3.
Yeah, Marisa, look, those things, quite honestly, they're obvious. They really are obvious. I mean, how the devil can you have people, these young kids who normally, with a family, who normally have family members around them, how can you isolate them in a cell and then think in some ways that they're going to be better or safe or able to return to the community feeling able to, being supported? Well, that's ridiculous. What an argument. What an impossibility. So at the very least, you can't lock them in a cell and leave them with a TV in the corner and leave them there for, well, on average about 16 hours a day is pretty basic, actually. 16 hours a day, right across the whole system, people are locked up for the majority of the day, locked up in a cell by themselves, isolated from other people, isolated from their community, isolated from their culture, and without any positive input. Just having a TV screen there in the corner, pouring out this inanities when that same screen could just as easily be a computer screen, and where they could be talking to, doing a Zoom to their cultural elders, to their family, and learning about music and art, and even talking to the Aboriginal Health Service, for example. All those things are obvious, and they're not happening.
Exactly. I was also having a look at their submission with the Community Justice Coalition, and they talk a lot about the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child. And, the other term of reference is National Minimum Standard, for computers in cells. They talk about that. But I'm interested in having a look at the human rights internationally. They've broken a lot of the covenants, haven't they?
Look, absolutely. There's not even a question about it. And when you've got a situation where these kids are isolated from their community, they aren't able to have an expression. They aren't able to have cultural input. When they're sitting isolated away from counselling that should be made available to them, when they haven't got education which is responsive to their needs. Look, most of these kids have had problems at school. They've been disaffected. They don't want to do the regular literacy and numeracy as the entry point. So it's ridiculous to think that they're going to sit inside a classroom and have some teacher who isn't going to properly engage with them. And have them listen to them. That's just silly. That's just not going to happen. So what should happen, it should be the time when they're spending by themselves in their cellars is the time when they can receive the education to which they're legally entitled. They're entitled to them as a matter of convention, as the international convention. So the human right of expression, to talk, right, to other people, there are significant human rights. The right to education, the human rights of education, the human rights of receiving your culture and participating in your culture, whilst in your cell and learning the things and be able to develop and actually use your time properly. And, of course, not to be locked away in the first place. That's the first thing. You should never be isolated from your community. You should be part of the community and you should remain that. There should be no excuse for anyone to be taken out of the community and for kids, at least of all for these children.
Absolutely. Now, where can listeners get to have a look at these submissions and download them?
Look, the submissions are actually on the Senate Inquiry's website itself. So the Senate inquiry is up there. I think it's called Youth Justice Senate Inquiry, and so all the submissions up there, about 160 submissions. Like, we've been through the submissions. We thought we should see what other people are saying as well. So we've done a bit of an analysis about what the other organisations are saying and what key people have to say about what needs to happen. I mean, it's a bit, in some ways, it's a bit a sad thing that most community organisations involved in youth justice aren't aware of the isolation that these young people suffer. Because I think there's only one submission that actually talks about even telehealth, whereas telehealth is only just one element of what's possible when you have telecommunications into the cells. So there's a sort of a big separation between what's happening on the ground and what external organisations, youth justice organisations, are seeing as important. So I think it's absolutely essential that the kids themselves, young people, can express for themselves what's happening, and through their representatives present what is important to them. That's what's necessary. And other people can see, as I say, even at this stage, to have input into a Senate inquiry. I'm sure there are ways in which that can happen.
Brett, thank you so much for coming on the program. As always, it's lovely to have you. Thanks a lot.
Wonderful. Thank you for the opportunity, Marisa.
Take care. We'll be in touch.
Okay.
Thanks.
Will do.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
And that was Brett Collins from Stewart-Assheton speaking about some submissions that have happened, that have been written, and about youth incarceration and recommendations for programs.
Stand in solidarity with Palestine this Sunday.
Hi, it's Nasser Mashni from Palestine Remembered, Australia's only dedicated show on Palestine. Join me every Saturday morning at 9:30, and very importantly, get along to our rallies. Sunday, 12 o'clock, State Library. Join us.
We have to mobilise to show our support for Palestine. 12 p.m, State Library, this Sunday.
Rally to demand freedom and justice for Palestine. No war on Gaza.
Free Palestine Melbourne is a 3CR supporter.
And you're back with the Doin Time show, and I'm going to be playing now some audio from the Free Palestine rally on Sunday. Now, we may not be going out with our usual theme song to say goodbye. So if it does run out, because we've got this is about 13 minutes, I wanted to say goodbye just in case, and that our show does air every Monday from 4 to 5. And thanking also Uncle and Keiran for coming onto the show, and also Brett Collins. But we'll end the show, I think, with some audio, and if there's any time left, then I'll say goodbye again. But otherwise, please listen to the audio from the Free Palestine rally on Sunday, and I believe that the speech is from Jordan Skudkety, but that will be introduced. It's so important to air this, so stay tuned.
For as long as it takes, week on and week on, every week, we will continue to shout and we'll continue to scream for Palestine. Free, free Palestine! Free Palestine! Just at free Lebanon as well, of course. Free Lebanon, free Sudan, Papua New Guinea, free all the oppressed people on this planet. That's what we fight for here. A quick reminder again for those parents of children, it's the National Children's Week, so hang around after their speeches. Around here we'll have some activities for kids. And a quick reminder as well for what's coming up this week. Geelong Community Barbecue on Saturday, October the 26th at Transvaal Square at the Geelong waterfront. Make your voices heard, head down with the family. They've had one yesterday and it was a great turnout. Again, we've got to spread this word, not just in Melbourne, but all over Australia. And then on Tuesday night, we've got the Free the Refugee rally, the closing rally. They've been camping for 100 days. at 808 Docklands, at Burke Street, Docklands. 100 days demanding this government to get their rights. On Tuesday there'll be their closing rally at 5:30 if you can make it down there. And then the same night, the Last Key, a film by Nicholas Hanna, which was filmed across Lebanon and occupied Palestine, will be screening at 6:30 at the Sun Theatre in Yarraville. And then upcoming will be the Your Taxes Fund Weapons Community Forum, a great forum that has been organised by some activists to explain how our money is funding war by buying and supporting weapons manufacturing here in our suburbs. That's something to be ashamed of, and that's something that we want, not only us, but the wider community to come and see where money is being spent rather than being spent on school and universities and hospitals, as being spent on weapons manufacturing. Okay. Our next speaker, on to our next speaker. Our next speaker is Jordan Shukri Masood. Jordan is a Palestinian Lebanese activist and a member of the Socialist Alliance, and he's been campaigning under the Council of Meribik and is a presenter at 3CR. Jordan has been around with us for a while and he's pretty much active at every event that's related to Palestine. Give it up to Jordan.
Everybody, I'd like to firstly acknowledge that we are on the stolen, unceded lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and I pay respect to all First Nations people. It is crucial to recognise that we cannot rightly talk about the horrors facing Palestinian people without acknowledging the ongoing genocide, dispossession of Aboriginal people on this continent. This includes systemic racist policing, forced removals and deaths in custody. So, my name's Jordan Shukri Masood. I'm a member of Socialist Alliance, Free Palestine Dandenong, married back to Palestine, and I'm honoured to speak here today. Israel's genocidal attacks on Gaza, its ever-intensifying violence in the West Bank, and its terrorism in Lebanon should be understood as a settler colonial project tied to United States imperialism. This is a US-backed attempt at regime change and destabilization in the region. What the US did to Iraq, Libya, Afghanistan, Syria is being repeated here, with Israel at the front being given a green light to carry out the most hideous violence and barbarism. The assassination of Yahya Sinwar was just the latest example of Israel killing any potential ceasefire negotiators and to stymie any prospects for peace. Shame! And there's nothing new about this. The US has used Israel in this way for decades. Israel has carried out counter-insurgency operations, assassinations against liberation movements across the world and within the region, and has sold weapons and military tech to oppressive regimes like Sri Lanka, Myanmar, South Sudan, India, just to name a few. That's absolutely shameful. Okay. We should ask, why is it that the US and the West has supported Israel's genocide despite such immense popular condemnation, such mass expense, and in the face of the deaths of thousands in Lebanon and tens of thousands in Palestine? It is because US capitalism requires this, and the capitalist class around the world understands this clearly. Capitalist growth and accumulation in countries such as the US, Britain, Germany and Australia is dependent on the appropriation, the expropriation and pilfering of resources from the global south. They need to impoverish, immiserate and dominate the south to keep it subordinated as a supplier within global commodity chains. And to this end, they will crush any movement or any government that seeks national liberation, self-determination or economic sovereignty. Using weapons tested in Palestine, they mutilate bodies, annihilate communities, and degrade the planet. Shame. Shame. And we have seen from our capitalist leaders, what we've seen is a callous disregard for the value of human life. From the perspective of our Western leaders, it is clear that Arab and Palestinian lives do not matter. It is a cruel display of racism and demonstrates an utter lack of humanity. As long as it has existed, Israel has been at the bleeding edge of Western imperialism in the region as they cut the region apart, and the importance of the oil-rich Middle East in American global power is abundantly clear here, and it explains why Israel receives more than any other country in US foreign aid. Shame. And while the US is the decisive sponsor in Israel's genocide, and their attacks in Lebanon, we must also condemn those who are most active in keeping Israel's oil and coal supply flowing. These include countries that have even been publicly critical of Israel, in word but not deed, including Russia, Brazil, Egypt, and China. Here in this country, we have our own government to contend with. Australia is deeply committed to these aims, and to be frank, it has its own agenda within the Asia Pacific. So, we've heard for over a year that the Australian Labor Party is complicit, but we should be a bit more clear. The ALP are enthusiastic participants. They are intentional and committed, along with the LNP coalition, to the United States imperialist wars. This means the continual supply of weapons components, political and diplomatic support to Israel. And among this slaughter, the Albanese government and figures within the ALP have claimed that they are advocating for peace and social cohesion. Shame. But if they were serious at all about this, they would immediately stop arming Israel and cut all military ties to Israel, including the sharing of information collected in the Pine Gap spy case. But they will not do this, and it is not surprising, because we should not forget that the Albanese government also committed hundreds of billions of dollars in public money towards weapons projects such as the AUKUS nuclear-powered submarine. As millions of people are languishing and suffering in a cost of living and housing crisis. And Albanese, he's very quick to remind us constantly that he grew up in public housing, yet his government is merciless in trying to destroy public housing, while Dutton, he seeks to heap blame on migrants and refugees for the housing crisis. Disgusting! Shameful! Disgusting! Shame! So with local and federal elections coming up, there are many calls to use your vote to punish Labor and punish the ALP, but we must be vigilant in recognising that it is not enough to just vote these parties out in elections. The real task that we have to grapple with is to build a political alternative for the billions of people on this planet, not the billionaires. True solutions will not come from Parliament, but from everyday, ordinary people becoming empowered to democratically organise their own communities and societies. Ooh, that sounds good. A better world is possible, and through building movements such as this one, we can glimpse a sketch of what this might look like. But we still need to grow and strengthen this movement, because if we have not yet been able to force the ALP to stop its support for the genocide in Gaza, then we will certainly not be able to restrain it as it pursues runaway climate chaos in its rapacious war drive for resources. But amid the darkness, The rise of this mass global movement has, without a doubt, been the brightest ray of hope. Given the scale of this genocide, it's not surprising that the struggle for Palestinian liberation has become a global point of unity for all of those who oppose the current state of order and Western imperialism. We have had to fight tooth and nail for every scrap we've won, and the world has not forgotten this, and more than a year on, we are still putting pressure on them, and they are responding to our movement. To win a free Palestine, or genuinely free anywhere, requires new forms of society organised around principles of self-emancipation, anti-imperialism, decolonisation, anti-authoritarianism, internationalism and feminism, just to name a few. The road to liberation and freedom for all oppressed, subjugated, exploited and dominated peoples and their lands passes through Palestine, because the struggle for a free Palestine is a struggle that aims at the heart of imperialism and a key cog in the global capitalist system. But nothing will be won if we do not keep coming out in numbers, with strength and overwhelming tenacity. So keep fighting, keep getting out there in the streets, picketing weapons factories, organising forms, grassroots, drill streams at all towns. Keep coming to these rallies. Free, free Palestine! Free, and free, free Lebanon!
Free, free Palestine! Free, free Lebanon! Social cohesion, eh? Social cohesion, my ass. Where is your social cohesion when people are being killed? Where is the human cohesion? Where is your human rights that lecture us about human rights and social cohesion when people and kids are being killed in Gaza for the last year? What happened to that, eh? That's why we're here today.
And you just heard some audio about the Free Palestine rally on Sunday. And it's goodbye from Marisa. Take care of each other. Thanks. Bye.
You've been listening to a 3CR podcast. If you found it valuable, please consider donating or subscribing to support independent community radio. To find out more, go to 3cr.org.au.